In the busy city of Ibadan, where the smell of fresh akara filled the air, and street vendors called out to customers, 14-year-old Amina Adeyemi was the heart of her neighborhood. Her laughter made everyone smile, her curiosity had no limits, and she loved her parents deeply. Alhaji Sule and Hajia Rahmat Adeyemi worked hard every day to give Amina the best life. They ran a successful textile business, traveling across Nigeria to grow it, all for their beloved daughter's future. Their frequent travels, however, meant Amina often needed someone to watch over her. For this, they turned to Kabiru, Sule's younger brother. Kabiru was family, reliable, cheerful, and always willing to help. Sule trusted him implicitly, as did Rahmat, though she sometimes felt uneasy about leaving Amina behind. But the demands of their business overruled her instincts. At first, Kabiru's presence seemed to bring comfort to Amina. He played with her, bought her treats, and even helped her with homework. But over time, his demeanor shifted. He became more controlling, discouraging Amina from sharing her thoughts with others. It was subtle at first, but Amina began to feel uneasy around him. One stormy evening, when the rain lashed against the windows, Kabiru crossed an unforgivable line. He manipulated Amina's trust, luring her into his room under the guise of giving her a special treat. When it was over, he threatened her in a chilling voice. "If you ever tell anyone, you'll die," he said, his face cold and devoid of remorse. Terrified and confused, Amina said nothing. She withdrew into herself, her once vibrant spirit replaced by silence and fear. The days that followed Kabiru's first assault marked the beginning of Amina's retreat into silence. She had once been a cheerful and lively child, quick to giggle at small jokes, or ask endless questions about the world around her. Now, her demeanor was that of a shadow, present, but barely there. At first, her parents didn't notice the change. Their busy schedules left little room for the quiet moments that could have revealed Amina's inner turmoil. When they returned home from trips, they were often too exhausted to do more than ask her the usual questions. How was school? Did you eat? Are you okay? Her responses were always the same. Yes, school was fine. Yes, I ate. Yes, I'm okay. But Amina wasn't okay. Her mornings, once filled with laughter and energy, now began with reluctance. Amina, who had always been eager to prepare for school, started dragging her feet. She took longer to get dressed and often sat on her bed staring blankly at her uniform. When Rahmat asked her what was wrong, Amina would simply shake her head. At school, her teachers began to notice her withdrawal. Amina, who had always been an active participant in class, no longer raised her hand. During lunch breaks, she sat alone, pushing her food around on her plate. Her best friend, Sade, tried to coax her into playing games during recess, but Amina always declined. "What's wrong, Amina?" Sade asked one day, her voice filled with concern. "Nothing," Amina mumbled, avoiding her friend's gaze. When Sade persisted, Amina snapped, "I said nothing," before running off to the corner of the playground, tears streaming down her face. At home, the changes were more pronounced. Amina stopped greeting her parents at the door with her usual excitement. Instead, she muttered a quiet welcome back before retreating to her room. Her favorite toys, once scattered across the living room, now lay untouched. Even her doll, Aisha, which she had carried everywhere, sat abandoned on the shelf. Rahmat noticed the change and tried to engage her. "Amina, don't you want to watch your favorite cartoon?" she asked one evening, sitting beside her daughter. "No, Mama," Amina replied, her eyes fixed on the floor. "What about playing outside with your friends? Or painting? You love painting." "I don't feel like it," Amina said softly. Rahmat frowned. "Amina, are you sure everything is okay? You've been so quiet lately." "Yes, Mama," Amina whispered, forcing a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sule was less observant. She's just growing up, he said when Rahmat voiced her concerns. Children change. She's probably just tired from school. But Rahmat couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She began watching Amina more closely, noting how her daughter flinched whenever Kabiru entered the room. She also noticed how Amina avoided being alone with him, often finding excuses to stay in her room or join her parents in the kitchen when he was around. Amina, are you sure you're okay with Uncle Kabiru staying with you? Rahmat asked one day, kneeling to look her daughter in the eyes. Yes, Mama, Amina said quickly, her voice shaking. Rahmat hesitated, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. But she didn't press further. We'll be back soon, she said, hugging her daughter tightly. Be good, okay? As Amina watched her parents drive away, a single tear rolled down her cheek. She knew the cycle of pain would continue, and she felt powerless to stop it. The days of silence stretched on, each one heavier than the last. Amina's world was a storm of fear, confusion, and loneliness. But even in her silence, there was a flicker of hope, a growing realization that she couldn't carry this burden forever. It was at school, during a counseling session, that Amina finally found the courage to speak out. The counselor's words about bad secrets resonated deeply, breaking through the walls of fear Kabiru had built around her. When she approached her teacher, Mrs. Olyabunmi, after class, it was as if a dam had burst. Amina's tears flowed freely as she shared her story, her voice trembling but determined. When the police arrived at Kabiru's apartment, he was gone. A neighbor revealed he had left in a hurry, taking only a small bag with him. He must have overheard someone talking, the officer said to Sule. Sule was livid. He's running because he knows he's guilty. Find him, he demanded. Weeks later, the police received a tip that Kabiru had been spotted in a nearby village. They planned an operation, but Kabiru escaped moments before they arrived. It seemed he was always one step ahead. Each failed attempt to arrest him deepened the family's frustration. Rahmat blamed herself for not acting sooner. I should have known, she cried one evening. I should have listened to my instincts. We left her with him over and over again. How could I be so blind? Sule, overcome with guilt, added, I thought I was doing the right thing for her by focusing on the business. I was wrong. I failed as a father. 3 months later, the police received a tip that Kabiru was hiding in a relative's home in Ilorin. This time, they acted swiftly, surrounding the house in the early hours of the morning. Kabiru was finally apprehended and brought back to Ibadan to face justice. When the family received the news, Sule wept openly. Finally, he said. Finally, that monster will pay for what he's done. Rahmat hugged Amina tightly, whispering, You're safe now, my love. He can't hurt you anymore. But the arrest didn't erase the pain. Amina's scars were deep, her innocence stolen by someone she had trusted. Her silence lingered, her once bright eyes now clouded with fear and sadness. Rahmat couldn't stop blaming herself. I left her with him, she said to Sule one evening. I ignored the signs. How could I not see what was happening? Sule, staring at a family photo, replied, I thought I was protecting her by working hard, but I wasn't there when she needed me. What kind of father am I? Their home, once filled with laughter, now felt heavy with regret. Each day, they replayed their decisions, wishing they had done something differently. One night, Rahmat knelt beside Amina's bed as she slept. We'll fix this, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. We'll do whatever it takes to make you whole again. Sule had always prided himself on being a hardworking provider. The textile business had grown significantly under his leadership, and he believed that the sacrifices he made were for the benefit of his family, especially Amina. Yet, when he was faced with the truth of what had happened, he could no longer see the business successes, the houses, or the cars as accomplishments. They meant nothing when he realized he had failed as a father. Sitting alone in his office, surrounded by reports and pending business transactions, Sule couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting back to Amina, the once vibrant child he had promised to protect. Instead of providing her with love and security, he had entrusted her to a man he called family, a man who had betrayed that trust in the most devastating way. "I should have seen it," he whispered to himself, his voice cracking. "She was different. I should have noticed. I was so busy with the business, so focused on success, that I couldn't even see that my daughter was silently suffering. I failed her. I failed my own flesh and blood." Every time he looked at Amina now, guilt swirled in his stomach. The happy little girl who once ran to him with excitement was gone, replaced by a quiet, withdrawn version who avoided eye contact and flinched when he tried to hold her. The joy in her eyes had been replaced by a permanent sadness, a sadness he couldn't fix. His eyes welled with tears, and he buried his face in his hands. Why didn't I see? Why did I not protect her? Sule had always been a man of action, quick to solve problems, but this betrayal within his own family, had no quick fix. No business deal, no acquisition, no success could erase what had happened to his daughter. He called his wife that evening. "Rahmat," he said, his voice hollow. "I have failed her." For Rahmat, the pain was just as overwhelming, if not more so. As a mother, she had always felt it was her duty to protect her child, to be the one who knew when something was wrong. But she had ignored the whispers of her own instincts, those nagging feelings that told her something was off with Kabiru, that Amina was no longer herself. In the quiet of the house, when Sule was away on business, Rahmat would sit in Amina's room, staring at the empty toys that once brought her joy. She could no longer ignore the signs, the times Amina had hesitated when Kabiru entered the room, the way she had pulled away from his touch, the way she had stopped eating her favorite foods. Rahmat had seen the change, but instead of confronting it, she had pushed it aside, convincing herself that it was just a phase. "I should have protected her." Rahmat had spent years being the pillar of the family, organizing the household, caring for her daughter, always thinking that if she worked hard enough, everything would fall into place. But now, every time she looked at Amina, she saw her own failure reflected in her daughter's eyes. "How could I have missed it, Sule? How could I have been so blind?" she said, tears streaming down her face as she sat beside her husband that night. Rahmat had been the one who had brought Amina to the school counselor when the girl first started becoming distant. But even then, she didn't press her daughter for answers. She had hoped that it was just a passing phase, a result of the pressures of school. Now, she knew that her inaction had allowed Kabiru to continue hurting Amina. The self-blame was suffocating. Every moment of tenderness she had shown Kabiru over the years, every time she had trusted him, felt like a betrayal now. She could barely look at the pictures of their family, the ones where they were all smiling, unaware of the nightmare lurking behind closed doors. "I was supposed to be her protector," Rahmat whispered. "I should have never left her alone with him." Though both Sule and Rahmat shared their individual feelings of guilt, they never quite spoke about it in the same way. Sule's regret came from feeling he had neglected Amina's emotional well-being in his pursuit of business success. Rahmat, on the other hand, felt a deep sense of maternal failure for not listening to her gut and failing to protect her daughter from harm. Each night after dinner, they would sit in silence, each consumed by their thoughts, unable to voice what they both knew: there was no going back. They couldn't undo the damage that had been done to Amina. On one particularly difficult evening, Rahmat broke down in front of Sule. "I don't even know how to look at her anymore," she sobbed. "She doesn't smile like she used to. She barely talks to me. I can't bear it, Sule. How do we undo this?" Sule held her, but his own tears flowed freely as well. "We can't undo it, Rahmat. We can't fix what's been broken. But we can be here for her. We can help her heal, even if it takes time. We owe it to her. They both knew that the road ahead would be long and painful. But they had also realized that their regrets would never truly disappear. They had failed Amina, and there was no erasing that truth. What remained was the hope that through their love, patience, and support, Amina could one day heal. The regret was overwhelming, but it also sparked a change in them. The Adeyemis couldn't go back in time, but they could move forward, striving to protect Amina and ensure that nothing like this ever happened again. They became advocates for child protection, using their painful experience to educate others. They spoke at schools and community centers, warning parents about the dangers of misplaced trust and the importance of paying attention to the signs of abuse. While they would never be able to erase the regret or the guilt, the Adeyemi family learned to cope with it, using it to fuel their determination to protect others. Their mission was clear: they would not allow Amina's pain to be in vain. But every time they looked at her, there was a bittersweet ache in their hearts, a constant reminder of the trust they had broken and the daughter they had failed to protect. As the months passed, Amina gradually started to open up. With the unwavering support of her parents, she began to attend therapy sessions, speak about her feelings, and even attempt to smile again. But it was clear that she was no longer the same carefree child. She was scarred, and while the wounds might heal, they would always leave a trace. Sule and Rahmat, though forever marked by their regrets, kept pushing forward, learning to love Amina not just as their daughter, but as a survivor. Together, as a family, they began the arduous journey of healing, knowing that some scars might never fully fade, but the love they shared would always remain a constant source of strength.